I am about to sit on my couch and watch my teen romantic comedy SNAFU for as long as I possibly can. Hopefully until I like it, and if not, then until it's over. But before I do, I want to make some clarifications. See, I did one of these for Non Non Biyoru yesterday, and it came out pretty well. A lot of people seem to enjoy it. A lot of people asked me if I'd do another one, so I think I will. But for some of the people who didn't seem to get it, I'm going to clarify some things. First, I'm not a consumer reviewer. I don't write so that I can reflect other people's opinions back at them. I don't write in such a way that is about really anything other than me sharing my experiences and relating them in hoping that the audience, that you guys will maybe find something to take away from it or enjoy. I don't go out of my way to present a certain worldview about anime or about the shows I cover. I don't have a specific set of tastes I'm trying to promote, and I definitely don't like to be contrarian just for the sake of it. I would absolutely love to enjoy the same shows that everyone else does. In fact, one of the things that fascinates me the most is when I fail to do that. And those are the moments that I really want to understand, because when something comes along like Non Non Biyoru, where it's a show that, as many people have said, seems like my type of show, because people know that I'm into these slow slice-of-life experiences, then to see that so many people like it and I don't, and I can't, understand why without watching the whole show and trying to really figure out how can I explain this to people? How can I explain to them why some people like me and plenty of others who, aren't necessarily all out there voicing their disdain for Non Non Biyoru, why they might feel that way. And, for me, a lot of people might think, well, you obviously didn't like it after the first 2 episodes. Why didn't you just stop there? And I did for actually, well over a year. I had dropped Non Non Biyoru way back. I didn't care about it. But for me, sometimes there's reasons that are more interesting to watch a show than liking it. Especially a show like that, which, like I said, so many people seem to enjoy. So many people would bring up to me. People would ask me my opinion on Non Non Biyoru. People would send it to me as a recommendation. People would talk about it all the time. And so, at some point, my curiosity overwhelms my desire to not watch it. And especially because I would like to be someone who can go through every year of anime and say that I've tried every show, and then be able to say, what I think the best shows of that year are. A lot like Your Movie Sucks, where he does his yearly big, I watched every movie that came out in 2014, here's what I consider the top 10. I'd love to be able to do that myself. And I think that it's important for me on some level to give a chance to some of the shows that people really seem to love, and try to understand why people loved those shows so much. With Non Non Biyoru, even though I watched 2 episodes and I already knew this wasn't going to be one of my top 10 shows of the year, the fact that it's on so many favorites lists and so beloved really made me want to, make sure that I understood my thoughts on it. I was never really able to put into words what I didn't like about Non Non Biyoru until I finished it. If you watch that whole video, then at the end you'll hear me figuring out that it's, there's these 2 characters I don't really like all that much, and I thought that, while the supporting cast was strong and the production was strong, it just didn't have enough chemistry between its characters to interest me, and I sort of came to the conclusion that maybe it has to do with the fact that I've seen so many shows in that genre, and there's other characters and other shows I'm more attached to, and how a lot of the time while watching Non Non Biyoru, my favorite moments and my favorite feelings were when I was getting nostalgic about other shows of that style. So, all of that is why I feel the need to try and watch certain shows that I don't expect to enjoy, that I know I don't like already, that maybe people won't really want to hear me talk about. Certainly fans of these shows won't want to hear it. Now, if you read the comments on the Non Non Biyoru video, you'll find a lot of people who were kind of waiting for someone to say all this stuff. Because, I mean, if I have to go through so much trouble just to be able to relate why I don't like Non Non Biyoru to people, then surely a lot of people are struggling with that. A lot of people have just been passively not liking it over the years and being like, whatever, it's for those guys, you know? But maybe there were people out there just, you know, waiting for someone to represent their thoughts on the show. Again, not that that's what I'm setting out to do, but I think it's nice if I can do that. So, it's also fun. I had a lot of fun doing that. It was a great way to spend a day, just sitting on the couch, mind-numbingly watching this show and recording videos about it, especially because I love live tweeting and stuff like that, you know, watching a show and talking about every thought that you have about it while you watch it. And this is a much better format for that than tweeting is, because tweets just disappear into the ether, and it's really hard to follow a chain of tweets. Like, you know, if I'm watching a show all day and tweeting about it, and you get on Twitter randomly at the end of the day or at random points, you don't see the whole thing. It's a lot easier to have it all in one video. So, all of that is why I'm going to watch this show and do this vlog about it, even though I hate this show. I've only seen the first 3 episodes, but, it's one of those shows that people adore. People really love this show. It's you know, critically well liked, high score on different, you know, aggregate websites like My Anime List. It's well reviewed. It's on a lot of favorites lists. It's one of those shows that, like, I need to know what about this show doesn't work for me so that I can put it into context with the rest of humanity, because it'll drive me crazy if I never completely understand it. So I'm going to watch the show and vlog my reactions. So my first impression of this show after the opening monologue of episode 1 is that Hachiman reminds me of myself in high school. A real piece of shit who thinks he's way smarter than he is, and presents really pretentious, big ideas like he knows what he's talking about, when he really doesn't. This show does that thing where, like, Sensei's explaining to the girl, like, why she can trust Hachiman not to be perverted, and she's like, he has a good grasp of risk and return, and, like, using these, like, these terms that remind me of the website You Are Not So Smart, like the kind of words that would be used in a listicle about, like, psychology or pop psychology. It just doesn't quite feel like dialogue. It feels more like someone writing their knowledge of psychology into a book. Although this is basically what light novel writing is usually like. It's very much like putting the ideas front and center. There's rarely any subtlety to the way that light novels present their big ideas. Doesn't necessarily bother me when there's a lot going on or when those ideas are good. Like in a case like this, because I do know what risk and return is and find it interesting, it doesn't bother me too much. But it sets the tone for what I'm expecting here. You know, it's like Hachiman has the personality that I had in high school, but Yuki Noshita has the philosophy. It's like if high school was split into 2 different people. So after episode 1, my impression of this show is that it's a lot like Bakemonogatari, but without all the things that make that show interesting. It's got the same predilection towards long-running parts where characters are just explaining the way that they look at the world to one another, interspersed with random jokes about typical anime humor. Just, oh, he's a pervert, ooh, blah blah, that kind of stuff. But whereas Monogatari, what made that show work was that the characters were backed by being really weird. A lot of their worldviews were pretty out there, even though they were stuff that you could relate to in it. It was less like this is the truth of the world, and more like this is some weird-ass perspective that this character has. And the humor was more offbeat, too. The show was beautiful looking. This show looks like total ass. I know it changes heavily between the 2 seasons, but Jesus Christ, The animation is god-awful. Yuki Noshita, I really don't like that character archetype of, like, the stuck-up, like, type of character. In Senjo Gahara's case, I like her in spite of her personality because of the way that her character is developed over the course of the show, and just the intrigue of the fact that she's not obvious. Whereas this character is, like, very straightforward in the way that it's like, her thing is that she's always authentic. She has no inauthenticity, she always speaks her mind. Where Senjo Gahara was a lot more nuanced in that regard, where she was kind of, veiled in certain ways and honest in others. And it felt more like the reason she didn't have friends was that she didn't know how to cope with that. Yuki Noshita seems like she understands the way she's acting and is choosing to just always be honest, even though her philosophy is that you should constantly be bettering yourself, and I don't know that the way she acts is necessarily the best way to act. Whereas Senjo Gahara, I think, is just kind of autistic. But whatever, I'll watch more. It's a really bizarre sort of, like, dual nature here, where, like, on the one hand, the attitude of this show is very much like a high schooler figuring out how the world works and being like, this is how the world works, I know the truth, and, like, you know, spewing those ideas. But on the other hand, this isn't the kind of stuff that I think high schoolers actually would realize. So, like, it feels like someone, like if a high schooler was, like, sat down with like a psychology professor or something, and they, like, explained them all this stuff about the way humans work, and then that high schooler explained those things to other people as though he had come to those conclusions himself. Does this make sense? I'm trying to explain this. I don't know if it makes sense. It's such a weird sort of feeling that it gives me, that it's like the attitude, like the things that they're realizing, I feel like, are beyond a high schooler's level, but then the way that those ideas are presented is like how a high schooler would present something that they think they know about the world, you know? I don't know. I feel the need to clarify that a lot of these things I'm saying about this show, and will continue to say, are not me necessarily saying this is a bad show, or even that this is bad writing. It is just not the type that I would prefer, and the subject matter of the show is, like, inherently annoying to me. The fact that it's about high schoolers and their situations, and, like, taking these scenarios and emotions so seriously. Like, I know that they would be serious for high schoolers. It's just very difficult for me to care about some of the things that these characters go through, or the way that they explain themselves. I really have to wonder if this show was set in anything other than high school, dealing with anything other than these, like, generic ideas of high school life, and if it didn't have so much of that light novel humor and flavor to it, would I be more capable of enjoying it? And it's because I can ask myself that I feel like maybe I can end up liking this show if I can acclimate to it well enough and just accept what it is. Because it's really the what that bothers me more so than the how. So episode 2 had an otaku chunibyo writer guy voiced by Nobuyuki Hiyama, one of my favorite voice actors. He's played a lot of fat otaku in his day. He played Kota Hirano in High School of the Dead. It's mostly, like, you know, cliche chunibyo light novel joke stuff, but I did like that Hachiman's reassurance for him after they were railing his story to pieces was, well, it's the illustrations that really matter. Don't worry too much about it. Hachiman does have some nice little punchlines. I'll give him that. I think I like this show a little bit more when it's being more on the goofy side and less on the self-important side, when it's less like, you know, deconstructing the hierarchies of high school life and more just like, you know, being just sort of a self-aware comedy series. I don't think it's original enough to make it like super entertaining in that regard, but it's definitely better than the like beating you over the head that I feel like it is when it, like, stuff like when the orange-haired girl is like talking to those other people about how she doesn't know how to be authentic, and like they're exploring the social hierarchy of this stuff, and it's just too blatant, you know, it's too in your face about like, this is what people are really like, and I don't know, I can't stand that kind of thing. I prefer that to, like, I like those kinds of ideas to be explored, just not in such a, like, direct way, where there's no, like I said before, nuance to that. You know, it's funny, watching a show like this makes me realize why most of these light novel shows, you know, usually have, like a wide cast of girls, because they're trying to have someone who appeals to every possible fan, even if most of them end up being vapid one-note characters. But in a show like this, where you've only got 2 girls, if you're like me and you don't find either one of them particularly interesting, or at least, like, attractive, then it's a lot harder to win you over. You know, while I might not be the biggest fan of Yuki Noshita's personality, I will say that her whole philosophy that everyone needs to constantly better themselves, and that specifically that they have to catch up to her because she's so perfect, I can definitely appreciate. So in episode 3, this got direct to the point of somewhat cartoony. The rich popular kids really were like the bad guys. Well, the one guy was the overly good guy, and the girl was the overly bad guy. Yuki Noshita really became like the overpowered trump card. Characters constantly talking about the powers they've gotten from their loneliness and stuff like that. Oh, and he walked in on them in the middle of changing at the end of the episode, just as I was recording this. I don't know if I feel more or less annoyed with that direction, because on the one hand, it's even more cliched and tired and boring, but it's less overbearing and dramatic and annoying. So I don't know which direction I'd rather the show go in. But now I'm through the 3 episodes that I'd already seen before, so let's see what the future holds. Well, no one told me that Hachiman had an adorable little sister voiced by Yuki Aoi. That's cool. Also, for everybody who watched my Non Non Biyoru video, I did eventually get that Japanese food I wanted. Today, this for lunch, I got a bowl of chicken ramen and some what were they called? Yakitori. Chicken on a stick that was really sweet. It was interesting. I would have got something other than ramen, but the place I was at is mostly a Korean place that just happens to have like sushi and ramen and some other Japanese appetizer type foods. So yeah, resolution to something literally no one cared about. Whoa, the teacher punched him and then said she was going to give him the annihilating second bullet, and he said, go straight to the exterminating third bullet, please. It's the S-Cryad reference! Whoa, out of nowhere, I didn't expect that! By the way, I just wanted to show, it's not as dark in here as it looks. It's just I'm filming myself with an inward camera that's not very good, and I'm sitting over in the dark, but it's not, it is daytime. I know in the last one, at some point I turned on the lights, and it was funny that it was brighter at night than it had been during the day. Well, after episode 4, I think I'm warming up to Hachiman a bit, because he has a lot of good jokes. I like that they're kind of trying to, yeah, it's so fucking dark. Just gotta get some kind of light over here. I like that they seem to be trying to pair him up with like other guys in his class and give him some guy friends or other people to play off of than the other two girls. Although the one guy who's like the guy who looks like a girl, like his personality is entirely just that he's the girly guy, and that's the joke, and that's also his personality. I mean, the other guy as well. His personality is just that he's the nice guy who's overly good. But at least that's, like, relevant to the themes of the show. You know, like, the girly guy, like, it really has nothing to do with what the general message of the show seems to be. He's just kind of there as someone for Hachiman to talk to. But we'll see how that develops as it goes. I'm in the cold open of episode 5, and that silver-haired girl has a pretty cool voice. Hachiman's whole rant about how he hates nice girls because he overthinks everything they do. I get it. I think the presentation is like that's something unique to like lonely people. I don't know, maybe it is. I just feel like that's everyone. Everyone misinterprets things other people say, especially when it's nice or cute girls talking to any guys. You're probably gonna get the wrong idea. But this level of high school resentment over it, I get it. I mean, I get that that's the point. He's not supposed to be a great guy. It's a show about high school. Just, the fact that this is the brand of conflict that appears in this show is groan-worthy to me. Especially when it gets into it's another one of those, I don't know if it's unearned pathos, because it's not so much pathos as it is just like, the whole episode's like a goofy, woohoo, wacky, fun characters, and then like, now we're serious and dramatic and yeah, I was thinking about this weird sort of, I don't know if it's a trend yet. I mostly know it from this show and Monogatari and maybe a couple others that aren't coming to mind. But there's this interesting facet where like, in these shows where it's like a harem type deal, or this one's not quite a harem, but it's like the main character has, you know, 2 women in his life, both of whom are available, and even though they're very attractive and you would think they'd be flirted with constantly, neither one of them has a boyfriend. And of course, both of them have vague feelings towards the main character, though in this case, so far, it's mostly just been the orange-haired girl. But like, his sister, on the other hand, the main character's sister, has a boyfriend and like is a normal average person, and you kind of get this in Monogatari too, where both of Araragi's younger sisters have boyfriends, and in that case it was like that was the joke, this weird meta joke where, you know, Araragi lives in this bizarro world surrounded by attractive women who are all into him, whereas you know, his sisters both have boyfriends, and there's this also weird meta humor about how they both have chaste relationships with their boyfriends, even though Araragi's constantly doing perverted things with them. It's a bizarre joke, but it's interesting that this show also has the same setup, where the little sister has a boyfriend who's just like a completely normal average guy, and yet the main character girls are all like, you know, single and surrounding the main guy. I really can't stand misunderstanding disco plots where everybody's just going around in circles misunderstanding each other for like a whole episode or entire show, and then eventually they stop misunderstanding each other because communication. At least this one wasn't too long. I'm halfway through season 1, probably at the end of the first light novel. The way that Yuki Noshita resolved the situation between Hikigaya and what's her name, which was just like this weird syntax debate or something. I don't know. It was like the words with which each of them were thinking about the situation they were in caused the conflict. I don't know. And then Yuki Noshita just gives this like really wordy pretzel logic explanation for why nobody's in the wrong, and it's all resolved. My eyebrows went pretty high up. So far this show's been going back and forth between annoying in exactly the ways I expected, and annoying in the way that a lot of the time it's just a, like, typical cliche light novel comedy show. So we'll see how it goes from there. You know, Hachiman's always saying someone needs to just marry the teacher already, and that she seems to like him too much. Why isn't he just marry the teacher? Maybe he's less okay with getting punched all the time than I would be. You know, this show doesn't feel nearly as long as Non Non Biyoru does, so I haven't really been having that tired veg state, but my brain's starting to do that thing, that hazing over, where I'm just in like this half coma. It makes it a lot easier in some ways. That was a joke a couple vlogs ago, by the way. I don't actually like getting punched. I think that's the only reason I wouldn't marry the teacher. So in this episode, the high schoolers, who are all incredibly self-aware about their own problems, notice this little girl in elementary school, because they're helping out at this school camp. They notice that she's lonely just like them. And then she kind of like gravitates over to them, and then she turns out to also be absurdly self-aware of her situation, but for some reason incapable of changing it. Why is there never any characters who just don't understand their own situation, like most people in elementary and high school? What the fuck is the point of the cliche Fujoshi character? Why is she there? Why is she in the show? She doesn't make any sense. Okay, I had to get up for a minute so I can try to explain this thing that bothers me in clearer terms. It's something that I feel like I've, for years been saying things to the effect of why this bothers me, but it's hard to put it exactly. I can't stand when people explain things in very vague terms in anime, but as if it's like a fact. For instance, in the Monogatari series, some of the parts that annoy me the most are like when they've got Hanekawa and like Senjo Gahara is explaining to her that because she's trying to be too perfect is why that where her problems come from, because she doesn't allow herself to be flawed sometimes or whatever. But the phrasing is never quite like I just put it. Characters will sort of like philosophize back and forth at each other, like give these long, winding, weird, esoteric explanations of how people work. And it's just kind of taken as like that's how it is. And it can be okay when it's, when it's obvious that it's a character's opinion, right? Like different people have different philosophies about how the world works. But there's just something about the way that characters will stand there and dump these long, winding worldviews that are very vague and unscientific, or just like, when someone's like, oh, the way the world is that people are greedy and everyone's trying to look out for themselves and get exactly what they want, That kind of cynical worldview, I feel like something that simple, that direct, is meant to be deconstructed. It's meant to be, that's the kind of thing that someone who doesn't understand the world would say, because the world is way more complex than that, and emotions are more complex than that. Hanekawa's problem isn't just that she tries to be too perfect or whatever. Like, there's more layers to it. There's more depth and nuance, at least there should be, for her to be a realistic character. And Monogatari has moments where it does okay with that, and then it has moments where I get like it's mostly like the Black Hanekawa arc, the OVA, where I was like really annoyed by the way that like they'd have these long worldview dumps that don't it doesn't really mean anything because the world isn't really like that. The world isn't that simple. People aren't that simple, and when they give these sweeping, general, vague explanations of the way things are, then I just find it boring and pointless. Because I'd rather watch a story that suggests to me the way things are. I'd rather see characters act out something that gives me ideas about the world, you know, whether accurate or not. I mean, that's like kind of the what storytelling can do that is interesting, you know. I'd rather like as opposed to say like Mao Yu versus Log Horizon, both from the same author. Mao Yu has a lot of parts where characters are just kind of describing economic theory or just like how certain economic principles will work on the world, and then they just kind of do those things. You don't really see it happening organically. It doesn't make you think about those things. It just kind of tells you information, you know? And at least in that case, a lot of it's more like substantiated. But like in a show like Log Horizon, then rather than characters explaining how economy works, you just kind of sometimes will see an economy develop. I mean, there will be explanations in there, and I don't think it's unreasonable for characters to explain things to each other, because it's something that human beings do. I don't think it's unreasonable for us to exposit to one another. You talk to your friends, you don't just talk about, like, you know, everything in parable form, but, like, when I watch a show like this, like my romantic love comedy SNAFU, where like the characters are just constantly explaining themselves or explaining situations, everyone already, like, the show is never like, watch this character and then you understand them. It's always just telling you the way the character is, usually from the character's own perspective, and they're not wrong about themselves. Like, it would be one, like, that was kind of why I was hesitant to criticize this show, having only seen the first 3 episodes, and I still am to some extent, because I'm only, 7 episodes in, but the show presents the characters in such a way where they'll, like, Yuki Noshita will say, like, this is why I don't get along with other people, and that will be exactly the correct reason. And it's not something we sort of watched and observed, it's just something we were told by her. And then we get into the episodes like this one with the little fucking elementary school girl, and like first we were just kind of passively observing that, okay, she seems to be a loner and distances herself from other people, but then she comes over and starts talking to the other, to the main characters, and she's just like, all those people are stupid, I'm just gonna do this, and then they're like, well, it's actually like this, and they're just like describing their personalities to each other. That's what so much of this show feels like. Characters just saying, here's what I am, here's what I'm like, here's my problems. And like I've, been saying, I think that most people who have these issues, or people who don't fit in, or people who are lonely, don't understand what the problem is. They don't get it. And that's why you have all these people, these like, so where like all the crazy people on the internet come from, for instance. People like your Elliot Rodger, who like thinks that women are scum because no one will date him because he doesn't understand his own issues, and then he goes and shoots a bunch of people. Like the way that these situations work is more often that people don't get it. They don't know what they're doing wrong, usually until much later, until after the fact. And once they know those things, that's when they can start working through it. Speaking personally as someone who was a loner throughout all of my school days, who has been bullied and stuff, I never understood why it was happening, I would say that personality-wise, I was probably closest to Yuki Noshita, in that I was extremely authentic about myself, didn't really, like, lie to people or try to fit in, but I didn't see it as like me on this personal crusade to to be better than everyone else by being honest. It was just the way I was. Like, I didn't understand that other people were lying about who they were and that they were trying to fit in with other groups. That was like an active thing you had to do, you know? I just didn't understand that, and that's why I didn't fit in. And now that I know those things, if I was in that situation, I still wouldn't try to fit in, but like, I now know how to present myself in a way that people can appreciate that authenticity, you know? Because surely Yuki Noshita can appreciate the idea, based on the fact that she's incredibly intelligent and able to explain away all these things. Surely she must realize that she can be authentic without being a dick to people, and yet she, you know, she presents herself like she completely gets her situation, and the show doesn't seem to question it very much. Although the funniest moments to me, like the moments that actually do work for me, are the rare times when she'll say something like she'll be recounting something that happened before where she was clearly in the wrong, but she'll phrase it like, you know, they were mad at me because they were stupider than me, you know. Those are the funniest moments in the show, because that's how those kind of people actually think, you know, that they're just the best. And that's how I thought back then, you know. I always thought like, well, other people just don't get it. I'm just smarter than everybody, you know. But I wouldn't then turn around and be able to explain the fact that that was my problem to someone, because if I understood that was the problem, then I wouldn't be having the problem. It's just this weird backwards take to me on like how these things work, and I can't stand it. I hate that whole style of writing, and in this show it's particularly egregious. Like, this one has it more than most other shows, and it bothers me to the greatest extent in this particular one, when it's not just being like a boring cliche middle of the road light novel adaptation. So after episode 7 and that long ass rant, I took a break for a few hours. I ate dinner, hung out in Mother's Basement's 100,000 subscriber special video. Congrats, Jeff. And recorded the pub crawl episode for the day. And I got pretty drunk in the process. Will this make this show more or less tolerable? Only one way to find out. After the cold open, all I could think was, I'm sure I'm not the only one who legitimately wants Hachiman to just hook up with the girly boy, right? Like, he seems to really like him. They both seem to really like each other. Why don't they just hook up? They're adorable together. It'd probably fix all his problems. I'd do it. So episode 8 had what was easily my favorite scene in the show so far, which is where they've got the little kids doing this test of courage thing, and they set it up so the popular kids, rather than dressing up as monsters as everyone else had been doing, just acted like gangsters and like tormented the kids by just like being Yakuza members. It was fucking hilarious. And then it turned out that that was actually the setup they were going for to resolve this conflict with the main little girl. Now, the logic behind why they were doing this was still filled with that usual, like, vague ideas about psychology and the world kind of thing that I can't stand and was ranting about, but the situation was so hilarious that I really thought it was a great idea of how to resolve that scene. So it's definitely the most interesting thing that's happened in the show so far. And I also think there's a lot of potential for the popular guy, the like super good-natured guy, to be the most interesting character if they do anything with him. The fact that he's starting to become self-aware by hanging out with Hachiman and like getting this insight into what lonely people are thinking is cool. I don't know how far they'll go with that, but it could be interesting. But I'm still bothered by the whole vague psychology thing that's going on. So episode 9 is entirely about this miscommunication where Hachiman is so sure that the orange-haired girl doesn't like him because he's not like all those other lonely guys who think that every girl who talks to them likes them. But the truth is, she actually does like him and he doesn't realize it. You know, I get it. I get his attitude. I've been there before. When I was in the 12th grade, there was this girl in my art class who I had a huge crush on. And I was convinced that there was no way that she also liked me, even though all of her actions would suggest such. In retrospect, I will always regret that I never actually asked or said anything. And I'll never know for sure. But knowing what I know now as an adult, I'm pretty sure she also might have liked me as well. Who knows? Not to say that I necessarily regret it. Everything else in my life has been informed by the decisions I've made until now. Changing anything would make me a different person, and I like who I am, so I wouldn't want to be a different person. But when I watch a show like this and think about how I haven't had a meaningful conversation with a woman in 2 fucking years, it definitely feels like it wears on my conscience a little bit. I'm drunk. Stupid ass fucking cell phone call interrupting confession bullshit. Fucking Hachiman getting all emo about some dumb shit. And you know what? I can't decide if it's pathetic of me that I got mad at a high schooler for not just recognizing that the fucking girl likes him because of my own personal problems. You know, I've been in a relationship before unlike him, but it's been over 2 years since it ended. And all I can think is, for fuck's sake, if a woman so obviously likes you, recognize it. Jesus Christ, Hachiman. I can't take your shit right now. It really feels like we're heading towards some kind of love triangle scenario in this show, and I can't stand love triangles. It's like, I mean, I don't know if it will be, you know, I don't think Yuki Noshita seems that into Hachiman yet. He seemed like he was into her, though now he's all disappointed in her because he realized that she's a liar. And the other girl obviously likes him, but they've got this whole, you know, all them misunderstanding each other constantly and shit, and fucking love triangles drive me crazy, because it's always just a bunch of misunderstandings and people not admitting their fucking feelings to one another that keeps them perpetuated. And I can't fucking stand it. I get it. You like each other. Fucking someone do something. Put this to a fucking end. It's a stalemate. Every fucking love triangle is just a stalemate that goes on forever. You just gotta watch all these fucking characters never say the right words to each other, go back and forth in this fucking circle of dumb bullshit where they all can't just fucking admit their fucking feelings and get it over with so we can move on with our fucking lives! One sentence review of White Album 2, by the way. Well written, but it sucks! I'm on episode 10, and I'm sure this was the intention of the show, but I really want to punch this red-haired chick in the fucking face. She is terrible. Jesus Christ. That wasn't like a woman-beating joke, by the way. I'm an equal opportunity asshole. I suddenly remembered that the reason I was watching the show is because it's really popular, and that became a matter of concern for me. Guys, if you want the cynical, biting social commentary, watch Kaiji. It's a lot better and a lot smarter. Am I too old to be watching high school anime? Surely the answer is no, because there are high school anime that I enjoy still. However, is it safe to say that those shows are the exception to the rule because they have appealed to me that goes beyond the fact that they are in high school. Because I'm beginning to feel that being set in high school is an automatic detriment to me. And it's only the other elements that make me enjoy a show. And if there's nothing else like that, then I obviously shouldn't be watching the show. Because I am horribly annoyed by high school problems as the premise of a show. Because problems you have in high school don't fucking matter once you're out of high school. The second high school ends, every single thing you gave a single fuck about in high school ceases to matter whatsoever. It all goes away. All the people you knew either go away or become fucking lazy idiots who hang around you all the fucking time for the rest of your life because they have nothing else going on in their lives. Or all the things you cared about, all the grades you got, they don't fucking matter. You go to college and you learn something completely different. You get a totally different set of life schools. Or you don't go to college because you're smart and you get a normal fucking job and that job becomes your life and that's all you fucking care about forever. Nothing in high school fucking matters. So when you base the drama of your plot around problems that you're having in high school, it's impossible to fucking care unless you're in high school, because it won't matter. The second you enter the adult world, none of this shit matters anymore. In a way, it's easier to accept shows about characters doing nothing in high school, because then at least it's just characters just having a good time. You can just sit back and relax and none of it fucking matters. It's not even real high school, you know? It's like, when I watch K-On!, it doesn't feel like my high school. It doesn't feel anything like what I experienced. It's nothing like it. It's just a bunch of fun characters having a fun time. The fact that it's high school doesn't matter. I don't think of it that way. It doesn't remind me of what high school is like. This show is like, hey, remember all those things that you cared about in high school? Well, how about you try caring about them again? Because they're going to be the whole dramatic basis of this entire show. And I'm like, I can't. It's been so long. I graduated 7 fucking years ago. I don't give a fuck about the social hierarchies and games that you play in high school. I've been living in my room since then. I am a fucking adult. I have a career. My career is to sit around and watch shitty high school anime that I don't care about and vlog about it to the internet. But I do have a career, and I don't even remember the faces of anyone I went to high school with the exception of the friends who hang around me still to this day. I don't even give a fuck about any of this shit. Please stop asking me to take the problems of these high school characters seriously, because I can't. And that's okay. Everyone has their own taste. Everyone has their own shows they like. That's why I'm not supposed to be watching this show. I was supposed to have dropped it after 3 episodes like I originally did. But due to my nature as an anime critic, as someone who has to talk about every fucking show and know everything about everything, and, you know, listen to people ask me about what are my thoughts on this show, what are my thoughts on that show I don't fucking care about. These are my thoughts on that show. This is why I'm not watching your favorite fucking anime. It's not for me. I'm too old for this shit. I'm on the second to last episode of Season 1, and I just wanted to quickly note that I can record with no hands, and that I fucking hate this show. I know I mentioned earlier that this show is like Monogatari without any of the interesting elements, but as it's gone on and become more of like a rom-com-y type thing, now it just feels like Toradora without any of the interesting elements. Like, if you only took the worst elements of Toradora and made a show out of it, it would be this. Just the most melodramatic, hardest to relate to. See, the parts where, like, you know, like in Toradora, they spend a lot of time making you really care about the characters. For those of us who do, people like me who love Toradora, they really get you into the characters and their dynamics and everything. And then later into the show, there's like these really heavy melodrama segments that are kind of iffy in like the late teen, early 20s episodes. Now imagine those if you didn't give a fuck about any of the characters. That's what this is. That's what this is like. For me. I think I'd like to live in one of those fancy apartment complexes like they've got in Japan. Something about the idea of taking an elevator up to my house every day sounds kind of cool. But maybe it would wear off quickly. I've made a huge mistake. Watching this show was a mistake. I don't care about what's happening. And it's in the middle of that part where the characters are like feeling things about each other. And I just don't care. I don't care about any of the characters. I don't care about what's going on. I really could not give less of a fuck. I can't believe the first season is still going. It's felt longer and longer as it's gone. And there's an entire second season, and the thought of that is breaking me right now. Well, I finished season 1. I'm feeling maybe a strong 3 to a light 4, maybe a light to decent 4. You know, I don't dislike the characters in this show. I don't even dislike their dynamic. I don't even dislike the concept of this show. I think it's interesting to follow some characters who are cynical and dismissive of the world, even in high school, and have them be presented as these sort of like almost Lelouch-esque heroes of the world of cynicism, if you will. You know, Hachiman coming up with these plans where he, for whatever reason, understands psychology way too well and can manipulate people into following his needs. It's a fun concept. What I despise is the spirit of this show. I hate the way it's written. I hate the way it's presented, where it's so fucking melodramatic and self-serious about its worldview. I think if this show embraced how goofy it was, really in a way like Code Geass did, where Code Geass was actually pretty funny and self-aware about itself, even though it was violent and over-the-top and ridiculous and dramatic. It also had a sense of humor about itself, understanding that it was so ridiculous and that Lelouch was such a funny character in a way. And I think if this show had more of that, and it does have moments where it approaches that. It has moments where it makes fun of Hachiman and Yuki Noshita in a very self-aware manner. I think there's some level on which this show does get that it's overbearing. But there's so many scenes where it gets so dramatic and so hard to deal with. So drama that I just can't take it. I'm not sure if this is an after credit scheme scene or did the next episode. It seems to have. Wait, there's not 13 episodes, are there? Am I preemptively? Oh god, there's 13 episodes! I thought I was done with this season and I was completely wrong! I can't believe that each season of this show is 13 episodes long. Episode 12 was such a last episode-y episode. But it's still going. Still living in season 1. I was not prepared. I went downstairs to get another bottle of beer, and instead I came up with a rack of ribs. How does that happen? You know, Hachiman is supposed to be pretty good at reading people, but I get that he doesn't understand that Orange Girl likes him because he's got this hang-up about women and everything. But Yuki Noshita's also supposed to be really good at reading people. How the fuck does she not see the countless signs that fucking Orange Girl's in love with him? I don't get it. She should have figured this shit out by now. So, the last episode was just a horribly generic, weak-ass comedy filler episode that had nothing to do with the themes of the show whatsoever. Ugh. So anyways, I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't expect necessarily to finish Season 2, but I definitely have to give it a look. Because I know that Season 2 of this show is significantly different from Season 1. It's handled by a different studio. It's much more nicely animated. This show looked like fucking garbage. And I think it's more serious in general. Now, the season's divisive. Most people seem to love it. I've seen a lot of people online talk about how Season 2 was what made the show for them and made it one of their favorites. However, amongst my friends, my friend Don-san and my little brother Shade, they both said that they had liked Season 1 and despised Season 2. They both thought it was boring and got way too up its own ass with the melodrama. And I watched the ending of Episode 2 with Shade one time, just because he happened to be watching it when I walked into his room. And it definitely looked way melodramatic in a way that I didn't think I'd like, which is why I've avoided the show for so long, because aside from not liking the first 2 episodes of Season 1, what I saw of Season 2 did not seem like something I would enjoy. But I'm going to give it the good old 3-episode test, because Seasons 1 and 2 came out in different years and had different styles, and people liked them for different reasons. So I feel like it's only fair to give both seasons a chance, since they're not exactly the same. Okay, Season 2 of this show just started in the most hilarious way possible. So, Season 1 ended in one of the most embarrassingly terribly animated concert scenes I've ever seen in a show. Which is funny, because a lot of shows pull the big concert scene towards the end, especially after Haruhi made it a big deal, because it's a great way to have like a big explosive moment of animation coupled with music in a context where it feels appropriate, usually at the end of setting up for a cultural festival, which is a big deal. It's become a trope, and they did it as badly as you could possibly do it at the end of Season 1. Or in Episode 12, rather. So Season 2 just opens up with this, like, heavily, like, it's like a rotoscoped version of those scenes, of, like, the most hyped scenes from Episode 12, but, like, way more animated. But it's, like, this weird, jarring rotoscope that doesn't look right at all. So it's like a really hilarious way to try to be like, hey guys, new studio, whoa, none of that shit animation from before, now it's weird looking rotoscopes. What a fucking hilarious way to start a season. So the funny thing about Season 2 of this show is that it's got much better character art, and it's got all these lighting effects. But it's not good looking. Like, it's not, you know, the first season was like ugly a lot of the time. But this one's not, it's like it's feigning looking good. Like, by having, like, by looking halfway decent. But it's framing everything in this, like, dramatic lighting and everything. But it just kind of draws more attention to how good it doesn't look, and how awkward some of the animation and rotoscoping are. So it's kind of like the visuals are finally as pretentious as the writing. Well, in episode 1, fucking nothing whatsoever was different from the way that it was in the first season, other than the fact that it's trying a little harder to look okay. There's a scene towards the end of the episode where the animation ramped up a little bit, but most of it honestly wasn't impressive to look at. It wasn't hideous like Season 1, but in a way it had even less character, because Season 1 at least went all out with the facial expressions, and in this time they just kind of fucking just look the same all the time. It's fancier looking, but it has even less character. And it's not so fancy looking that it looks good, so it's just a fucking waste! The writing's exactly the same. I mean, maybe it'll be different later, but like, Jesus Christ, it's the same fucking shit. It's no different. It's the same shit. Oh, God. Oh, this show, I can't. I can't take this show. I definitely don't think I'm gonna be able to finish this season unless it immediately gets better. Like, I'm really gonna give it 3 episodes, and then I can't fucking take anymore. I understand how they get away with Hachiman still acting like he doesn't have any guy friends, like he's got no fucking friends in the world, when the damn tennis club kid is obsessed with him. He fucking constantly wants to hang out with them, and Hachiman loves the kid. He's not like the fat guy where he doesn't even like him, so he just wants him to go away. They fucking both are clearly friends with each other, so how the fuck can they keep up the conceit that he supposedly has no fucking friends when he has fucking friends? I tried to find my more realistic looking handgun toys, but I couldn't find them. I promise I looked. The only thing I could find was this giant fucking Nerf gun for this suicide joke. Oh, God. You know, the only thing visually that Season 1 had going for it was that it had really expressive faces, and those gave it at least a little bit of charm and character. Oh, where does the cat want to go? But man, this season, it just has nothing. It's got these moments, like, you know, they really... The drama, the melodrama, the thing I like least about the show is the one thing that's been ramped up by the fucking animation budget getting a little higher. So now when they have a big dramatic scene, people can move their faces and hair around needlessly. It adds nothing. It does nothing for me. Does nothing for the show. It really doesn't add anything. Because it's not impressive. This isn't fucking Hibike Euphonium. This isn't a show where the animation and dialogue can complement each other in such a way that it blows your fucking mind with the cinematographic, is that a word? Potential. No. It just looks average. It's barely okay, and the dialogue hasn't changed at all. It's the same shit. It's the same fucking show. Nothing has changed. The only difference is that it's even more boring. Yuki Aoi is a great actress. She nails the sister in this scene at the start of episode 3. As she always does. Long time fan. Big time fan. Big thumbs up for Yuki Aoi. Younger than me, I think. Yeah, definitely. Great actress. You know, after recording that last bit, I realized how crazy it is to be a long-time fan of someone younger than me, but it is true. I think when Kurenai came out, she was like 14 and I was like 17. So I was older than her even when I was a fan, even though I was also young. And she's still great, still doing great work. You know, how many people that you were a fan of when you were 14 who were younger than you can you say are still doing great work? Probably zero. I just realized Kurenai aired at the end of 2007. Or maybe early 2008. Either way, I was definitely not 17 yet. I was 15 or 16. But she also might have been younger than 14 when Kurenai aired. Either way, I think I said something backwards in the last one. Alright, I'm fucking done. Can't do it anymore. I watched 3 episodes of season 2. The fucking melodrama has been hiked up to 11. The characters have become completely fucking insufferable. I can't take the fucking attitude of Hachiman any fucking more. Watching him mope around like a fucking asshole all day, just being this mopey, grouchy bitch, is more than I could possibly take for any more episodes. These characters are insufferable. This show's entire self, everything about it, it is just, I can't handle this level of mopey, melodramatic, boring fucking bullshit anymore. I'm sorry, fans of the show, that I have to be so aggressive about it, but it is rare that I managed to get this far into a show that pisses me off as much as this one does. I honestly think I hate season 2 far more than season 1 based on the 3 episodes I've seen. It has been insufferable, and I will be glad to never see it again and to be confident now that I've seen enough of the show to state with absolute sureness that I never want to see it again.